Life, Loss and Legacy is a general information podcast only. This does not constitute professional advice as we simply don't know your individual circumstances. If you do have any questions, please be sure to contact the guests of the episode. It should also be noted that the opinions expressed by the guests and host of the podcast are theirs alone and do not represent the opinions or perspectives of their employer or any other associations. That's enough warnings. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to Life, Loss and Legacy, a planning solo podcast. My name's Jordan Vaka. I'm an independent financial advisor, and this podcast is all about helping people navigating those first few years after the loss of their partner. I'm joined today by the wonderful Donna Cameron of the Couch Psychology. Thanks for joining us today, Donna.
That's okay.
Donna is a psychologist. She has over 20 years in private practice, works with clients of all ages. She is a mum of three herself and works with a lot of clients who are going through loss in their lives, which is why I've asked Donna to join us today, because the topic is parenting after loss. It's a really big topic. It's one that I am outside my comfort zone with, so I am putting our fates in Donna's hands for the next hour or so as we navigate these things. I suppose I should put something up top. Like, we're going to be talking about some pretty heavy stuff, so feel free to drop in and out of the episode. If you're not ready to listen to this, completely understand. But if you have any questions, send them through later on. Now, we'll be covering off three main areas, the key things people should be aware of as parents after they lose their partner, how hard it is, and how can we manage that process of juggling the needs of the parent with the kids, and some ideas and tips that Donna will provide that we can take away to start working on. So, Donna, I've run through all of that. Any quick notes you wanted to pop out there for people listening before we hop into the real meat of what we're talking about?
No, I think it's exactly what you said. This can be a really sensitive topic for a lot of people. I think as, humans living in the culture that we do, death is something that we don't really openly discuss. I often say to, friends and even clients that it would be very interesting and different living in cultures that kind of, really celebrate, death and kind of people moving on to whatever they believe is, beyond this life, and how they maybe cope in situations like this. So I think culturally it's very different. So if this is something that you are kind of struggling with, my advice would just be, just listen. And then from what you hear, you might identify that there is some bits that you might be stuck on in your own life, and then you could always explore that and maybe get some, extra assistance to help you through that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. And I mean, this is a leading question, and I think I know the answer, but do you think that culture we have where we don't really talk about death, is that a positive or a negative thing?
I personally believe it's a negative. Probably because it's kind of inevitable, right? It's not something that we can, I guess if it's something like you don't want to talk about maybe getting sick or illnesses, we can definitely go, well, that might not happen. So why do we need to bring those thoughts into our head? But the death, unfortunately, well, it happens to all of us. So yeah. I think if you were living in a culture that kind of celebrated that, and I think they also celebrate it from you being such a young age, that it just would take away maybe some of the fear. And I think especially, I guess, in the culture, that we kind of live in, and a lot of the clients that I see, most of this is based around fear. And as humans, again, we don't like things that we don't know. Like, that's basically what it comes down to. I think if we could all magically kind of have an experience and know what happened after we died, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It's just we don't know. It's the unknown.
We don't like that. We're
like
uncomfortable
that
by that.
As people, we're really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Talking about this, I mean, I mentioned before we started recording, I have a funeral that I'm going to today. It's on my wife's side of the family. Elderly person passed away. Not surprising, but still unexpected. And seeing the way that family has really rallied around each other, communicated, really been open about things. I think back to some other moments where things weren't like that, and just how much healthier it is to see people talking about things and being vulnerable and putting it out there. Yeah. So, completely agree. The more we can talk about these kind of things, not to be morbid, but just to help be prepared and help make that path a bit smoother.
Yeah, and it's also exactly what you just sort of said then. Like, we do just associate it with morbid, right? And that's exactly summing it up. It's like we don't want to talk about it because that's a sad topic, that's a depressing topic, that's a morbid topic. And, it would be helpful if, we could still say, I don't like that. I don't like the idea of losing people. I don't like the idea of, kind of the thought that my time might be up. But, it is what's going to happen, and maybe just changing those simple words would be a really positive start.
I mean, we're completely off track. We've got some stuff we'll come back to, but I think it also you're depriving yourself of some of the really beautiful moments that can come talking about those things, because death, like everything, it's not all negative or all positive. It's a very nuanced and mixed topic, and if you're just going to exclude that as a topic, you're missing out on some other things. But look, I'll drag us back on track, or else we'll talk all day. So one thing I was really keen to explore is, I guess, some of the big key pillars of the process and the experience of parenting after loss. So I guess I'm curious, we're all kind of familiar with the different stages of grief or the different stages of acceptance. Can you walk us through a little bit, I guess, the process that occurs for everybody when they experience a loss, like losing a partner?
Yeah. So first note is you cannot do anything to not go through these stages. So no matter how hard you try, you will go through grief and loss. And, the closer the relationship was to you, then, the more that's really going to kind of, hit you and really hurt that heart, kind of emotional kind of state and area as well. So 20 plus years in this industry, working in this, I've had lots of people trying to find ways to get around it. I have clients walk in and say, okay, so that grief and loss thing, Donna, I know you're going to talk to me about it, but I think I've done it. It's all over now. Now, what do I do now to kind of step into the next bit? And it's like, okay, so you're not, and nice try, but you can't. So I guess, that's sort of the first thing to really acknowledge. Lots of, if we think back to some of the big sitcoms I think we used to watch, like the psychology kind of sitcoms, and every episode would have had something in that on the grief and loss, process. And again, I think it was just trying to really educate people on, you can try and, kind of deny it, but it's going to happen. So the next point to really take notice of is at each stage, and, most people do know the stages. There's the basic 5, the denial period, pretty self-explanatory. Even again, though, in our brain, we know that this has happened. We know that this person has passed. We'll use as many opportunities as we can to kind of maybe try and pretend that hasn't happened.
And that's not always conscious, is it? That's often a very subconscious.
Not at all, yeah. And it can just be even in that rest state. So it can be where people, and I guess what we're talking about, especially with like more of the partner or in a relationship, losing a partner, very hard to, kind of deny that that's happened. It's not like maybe a grandparent that lives in a different country that you can kind of think, maybe they're just, they're still over in, Switzerland and they're perfectly fine. What can happen is when you go into, I guess, that rest state, that dream state, you might wake up and kind of have that like, oh no, it's okay, everything's okay, they're still here. And then it's like, oh no, they're not here again. So it can just be even those subtle, kind of, unconscious moments. And it can also be a lot in the language that you use. It's really difficult, especially in the early stages, for people to adapt, their language. So if I'm speaking to you and something's happened with my partner and we had something planned maybe next weekend, you might say, oh, what are you up to or whatever? And I might go, oh, we've got this, first birthday on the weekend. And then it's, again, that kind of moment of where I get to pretend everything's okay, but now reality hits and I've got to go back into that, oh my gosh, no, it's not we, it's I. So that's where sometimes that subtle denial can kind of come through, and where people might not expect it.
I mean, that's a moment of some pain as well, I imagine, that you just keep reliving until you move to the next stage.
That's right. And that's where, again, these stages are kind of not really, you're going to have 2 weeks in that stage, or you're going to have, 2 minutes in this stage.
Is there a checklist, Donna? Is there something I can work through, a nice linear checklist?
That's right. That's what everyone wants, right? Yeah. And also what happens is, as we work through the stages, and I guess, so say after denial comes into then that real kind of anger. And again, an emotion I don't really need to explain to people. We know what anger is. But anger and grief can be, I guess it goes back to sometimes what I define as that real raw anger. So, we might get frustrated at just things that don't go well at work or that kind of stuff. But anger and grief can be really like, it has to be kind of raw and gritty, if that makes sense. So you can't kind of just go, oh, that really annoyed me today. Like, you're really in this. No, this is like beep, beep, beep. You know, there's lots of, you
So
can't
unreasonable,
just kind of, yeah, and you've
exposed
got to
nerve.
yeah, that's right. And you've kind of got to accept that you are going to be probably very irrational. You might be a very kind of passive person normally in life who never swears, and now all of a sudden you might be really needing to use those bigger words to describe, you know, how angry and annoyed and pissed off you really are at this situation, because it's not fair. And again, what will happen is, say, when we go from like that denial to that anger, it doesn't mean that once we've gone through denial and we're into anger, that we're not going to now go and say hi to denial again. So, you know, that's the great part of grief and loss.
So it can be circular. You can be sort of fluidly rolling between the different stages.
Yep. And what I often describe to a lot of my clients, and this isn't, you know, this is different again for everybody, but what I've found just over the years is that it's almost like a little bit like kind of this. So when we've got the 5, if you put it as a circle, then you might be, you know, sort of in denial, and then you might come more into anger, and then you'll say hi to denial a little bit again, and then you'll come back into anger, and then you might hit this next one, which is, you know, depression. And that's that real now sad, you know. And again, this sounds kind of confusing sometimes to people, because if they had to identify how they felt maybe after a loss, they'd probably put depression or sadness at the top, because what's that first feeling that they'll probably identify that they felt. So again, this is where it's not just going to start at one and kind of, you know, delicately go through. It's going to be really this circular, and let's check in on all of these stages, you know, at each time.
And then from depression, we move through to
good old bargaining.
Okay, this one I'm a bit curious about, because
yeah. So this one's kind of like, how do I change it? How do I fix it? This is where almost our brain kicks in. I guess if I had to look at the stages, the brain ones are probably like our denial and our bargaining. You know, that's where we're really in our head. That's where we're trying to make this not true. Or what can I do now up here in my head to fix this? This is very human kind of behaviors, right? This is where we live a lot of the times in our brain to make sense of things. Whereas I guess the other ones, that anger and depression, are more of the feeling ones, which we like to avoid. We don't really want to talk about. So once
we're all
go
rational
back up
human beings, we're all perfectly rational.
We've got complete control of this, right? We don't need to do emotions. So the bargaining one is kind of, I probably hate it out of all of the stages if I had to weirdly choose, but I'm a psych, right? I've got to love the emotional stages in a weird way. The bargaining one, though, I really think is it's sticky, it's difficult. It's where people can get stuck because they know rationally they can't kind of say, oh, why didn't you take that horrible person who just committed all of these crimes? You know, why did you take my loved one who was, you know, a beautiful person and who did nothing wrong in this life? It really makes people question if they do have spiritual kind of beliefs. I feel like sometimes they can kind of get a little bit more stuck in the bargaining. It might be the really heavy practicing, you know, Catholic or Christian who now is kind of going, no, like, I have this belief,
really gets tested.
What are you doing? Yeah, your faith is tested. Like, why did you take my person? I've lived this life of following all the lists, all the commandments, and now all of a sudden you've done this to me and you've done this to this person. So that's not fair. There's a lot of take me. There's a lot of take me, not them, especially with parents of younger people. So if you've lost, you know, a partner, if they've still got parents here, the parents will be really kind of like, why was it them? I'm older. I've lived more of a life. Take me instead. And especially with that faith, like that real looking up, and you see it in sessions, they'll look up to that sky of where their belief system is, and they will get really angry and kind of yell at that higher being that they believe in.
So it's almost we're trying to impose our logic onto just the chaos of life and try to find a reason. And, you know, there often isn't. It's just that chaotic outcome of being a human, I suppose. So
that's right. Yep.
How do they get out of that?
So then we get the last one, which is acceptance. Look, I think the getting out of the bargaining is kind of eventually realizing that you can't make deals. You can't change things. Good conversations around, you know, acceptance of things that are outside of your control will help people shift by that. if there's people who do have high faith, talking, I guess, to, kind of their supports in that area. Hopefully people with, shared experience, lived experiences, that kind of stuff really helps people through that bargaining stage. And I guess with clients in here through the bargaining stage, I'm really trying to get them to shut their head up. So almost weirdly trying to get them to, when I sort of said like this, almost come back to one of those emotional states, because I do feel that when people can sit in that emotional state, acceptance can come through easier. That's, again, just sort of what I have experienced in my belief.
Because they're quieting down their head, and their heart, for want of a better term, is driving the bus a little bit more. It opens them up a little bit more to that idea.
Yeah. So it just means that then, and I guess if they are reaching out to, say, professionals such as myself, we really have got a lot more to work with when we're just teaching people how to validate those emotions and how they're feeling, to let them process. If I can say to you, it's okay that you're allowed to be sad and angry that you've just lost your partner. You don't have to be okay with acceptance. We need to kind of get you to acceptance that this has happened, but you actually don't need to be okay with acceptance.
Yeah, it's not called happiness. It's called acceptance.
It's not called happiness, and it's not called joy about what happened in my life. It's purely just acceptance. It's just accepting this really shitty thing that has now happened in your world.
Because I'm thinking back to what we were talking about, how, denying the emotional aspect kind of makes it all a bit worse. Mm-hmm. So that idea of moving back into that emotional state, helping to move forward, is really positive. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, is an awareness and a recognition of the stages, if a person can see the stages they're in, does that help them, or is that a benefit?
I think other people will probably notice the stages that they're in during that time. I think in the grief and loss process, especially with a loved one such as a partner and that close, it's an interesting question, because I'm kind of thinking, would I even notice them, even in, kind of being a psychologist and working in this field? I might be a little bit more aware of it, but I still think it would be difficult for me to know exactly, where I was at. And it's also not really your role as the person going through it to need to identify that. So I guess I'd prefer others maybe watching, monitoring and assisting through that process, if that makes sense. I don't think it's something that you need to be sitting there kind of identifying yourself. Where am I at? Maybe the question that could be helpful for people would be, I know what the stages are, and maybe a period of time after the passing has happened and the death has happened, maybe then sitting in there and kind of going, where do I feel like I am now? And do I feel like I processed those, or do I feel like I got stuck or avoided any of those? That's probably the question that I would believe would be more helpful for people looking inwards.
Yeah, I like that. And part of that question as well is we're going to talk about that interaction that parents have with their kids during this really difficult stage. And I wonder if, you never want people to be that armchair psychologist, but just an awareness of the stages perhaps the kids are going through, I imagine could be useful, not to fix it yourself, but to maybe bring in the people that can help and fix it.
100%. And I think most people, even if they don't, work in this field, even if they haven't, had a lot of, loss in their life, subtly, subconsciously, from watching TV, from talking to people, do know, the 5 kind of stages. I think if this was a trivia question, most people would probably get it right. I think it's just information that is in your mind. So, when it does come to that, and which we'll talk about as well, that's when it will be important, I guess, to be identifying in your children what stage they're at. But again, I kind of want to say, let's go back to that first comment I made. It's going to happen naturally. So the process is a process. Our bodies have been going through this since the beginning of time, and it knows what to do. It's kind of like, breathing in our heart. We're not sitting here worried about that process kind of happening at the moment. It just knows what to do. And think of the grief and loss process as that as well in you or children. It knows what to do. So let it happen.
So for us perfectionists out there that work in a very linear way, can I finish grief? Can I like complete it and then move on to the next thing?
So most people who have ever lost someone, and especially someone really close, will say that grief never goes away. I like to, I guess, rephrase that a little bit to say that your grief and loss process will come to an end. This actual process that you need to go through in the end, you know, it will change. It will maybe not come to an end. That might be the wrong words, but it will change. It will alter. You will go through this really circle of those 5 stages really intensely, you know, at the start of that grief and loss process. And, you know, again, sorry for the number of people in the room, but there's no set time frames on that. But what most people, I guess, say, you know, from loss of really strong partners and loved ones is that they learn how to live again. They learn how to get on with life. There'll always be a part that will hurt from losing that person. They'll always miss them. And then I think maybe we separate that a little bit. Maybe we say, well, yes, you will come through that grief and loss process. You will go through those stages. And then there'll be something different after that. And I guess that's life after loss, right? That's this next stage of your life. And is there going to be emotions associated with that? Of course there is. You're human. So maybe we can say those emotions will be now managing life after loss. They don't necessarily have to be the emotions of the grief and loss process, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think there's so many metaphors that people use and they become cliche and it becomes really sort of tacky. I think if you've lost someone, you can get sick of hearing some of those things, but it's good to know that, you carry it with you. It doesn't have to be everything always.
Yeah.
It'll come with you.
Yeah, and for what we're talking about as well with parents, it can't be everything.
You know? And this is something I'm curious about. I'm not curious, the grief experience or process, how can that affect individuals, you know, parents and children? And for people listening, what are maybe some of the negative effects that they should be keeping an eye out for?
So I guess, you know, we sort of talked about just sort of briefly some of those 5 kind of, you know, symptoms and 5 sort of stages of the grief and loss at the start. Adults and children, like we said, will go through the same things. Children will go through it differently, though, because they have different lived experiences. And they might have different things, like even just different belief systems, you know, like children are very open-minded to their beliefs of what they think is going on in the world. You know, you might have a child who, you know, is very kind of comfortable to put that loved one, whether that be a parent or anyone, kind of, you know, up in the sky as a star, or, you know, with one of their favorite characters that they kind of love as well. Children are also, I feel, you know, and we see this in them, they're more adaptable. They just are. They just do this better than us adults. Like and it's kind of weird because, you know, again, the language around this, what you sort of said before, all the comments is a lot of like, oh my gosh, this must be so now. And I'm not saying it's not devastating. Like, it'd be horrific for the children to, you know, be going through and to have now that parent gone for such now a long period of their future lives coming up. But I think that language is really, you know, oh my gosh, this must be so horrible now. That child's not going to have this parent. They're not going to be at their wedding. They're not going to be here. Like, you know, that language really kicks in from those first conversations about, you know, losing maybe, you know, a parent. And I kind of sit there sometimes and go, well, how do you know your child's even going to get married? Like, you know, maybe your child doesn't want to get married in the future. So why are you already writing their script that they're going to have this horrible experience on this, you know, future wedding day that may or may not even happen? And how do you know what the relationship was going to be like with, you know, their parents in the future? Maybe they didn't like their parents in the future.
Just a job. Yeah. I mean, is it, again, I think I know the answer to this, but it's not inherently a disaster. How do I say this carefully? Losing a parent is awful and sad and devastating, but it's not necessarily going to change that child's trajectory. Like, they are not going to end up on the streets because they've lost their parent.
No.
The surviving parent can do a really good job in helping smooth that path. Is that fair to say?
100%. 100%. Yeah. And again, look at the children who have 2 healthy parents their whole life. We can't predict what life that child has and predict that then they're going to be, you know, a great human being either. So, yeah, so I think it's taking a lot of that away. But I guess the main point as well for children being that they'll still go through the grief and loss process. Their thoughts and their feelings may be very different, though, from an adult. And it's really, really important for the adult not to make assumptions about the child's experience and not to also project those sort of things onto the child to create this script for their future. of they're going to now be sad for the rest of their life because they don't have parent A or B in their life. But again, making those assumptions of how they're thinking or feeling and assuming that they're not going to adapt to this future that they have.
I think one of the dangers we have, I'll just sort of step to the side a little bit here, is we're not talking about these things to try to make parents feel more guilty. If you're like any other parent, you already feel guilty enough. You're doing the best that you can. It's more a matter of trying to show you a few of the lights to stick to and to try to navigate. Because one of the things that I think people feel, implicitly and culturally, is this idea that you shouldn't be showing negative emotion in front of your children. But in this period of time, that's going to be very hard for people. So what should people do? Should people hide in their room when they're upset?
No, and look, and this is this is one of the topics just in general that really, talk to any psych, and we love that. We love that language too of the negative emotions, Jordan. Like, change that. They're not negative emotions, they're emotions.
All right, Donna, let's put up the boundaries, okay? This isn't about me.
We'll have a chat after this. No, look, it's all about, it's children need to see how to model everything in life, right? So we show them how to brush their teeth. We show them how to get dressed, tie their shoelaces. Why are we not showing them how to release emotions? And that being the good, bad, or the ugly emotions, or however you want to define them. So it's got to be age appropriate, You still need to, obviously, you don't want to make your child scared. That's probably the simplest way to kind of have this conversation.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting on the couch and you're having a moment because you've just heard a song that's come on the radio that was your wedding song, for example, let's go with something like that, and you're having a little cry, and, child 5 to 8 or older, kind of walks in and says, Mummy, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Then it's not about, oh, no, I was just cutting the onions and it's okay, I'm fine. It's okay to say, oh, Mummy just heard a song that really made me think of Daddy. It was actually, the song that we played at our wedding, and it just made me feel a little bit sad because I really miss him. And so I'm actually just having a little bit of a cry because that's going to get it out of my body, and then we can get on with what we kind of need to do. And then child might go, I really miss Daddy too. And then, that can be then a conversation of, well, do you want to sit here and do you need to have a cry with Mummy as well right now? Do you need a hug from Mummy? Like, what do you need now for your sad feeling, or for how do you feel? I feel sad too. Well, let's feel sad together. It's about educating, how do I feel emotion, validate an emotion, and then release an emotion appropriately. What wouldn't be okay is 4-year-old, 5-year-old walking in, parents on the couch, oh my gosh, I can't survive, I can't live, I don't want to be here. And again, I'm overreacting, but this is sort of just to really give people that idea of, like, the emotions aren't the scary bit, it's just being appropriate with it. And if child walks in and then goes, oh my gosh, something's wrong, they're also going, oh, this emotion looks really scary. Mum said she's sad, and now she's saying words like, I don't understand the words that she's saying. This is really scary. So if Mum needs to have that big release, that's fine as well, that might need to happen, in the shower when child's asleep, or with Mum's friends or family, where she can really kind of pour it out. So it's about being mindful of, I guess, how and the impact the child's going to see, but it's do not block it, because your child will believe then, first of all, that you're either a robot,
that didn't care and don't miss them.
Yeah, don't care. And also, this child's then going to go on to repeat these behaviours, in their world. So something happens even in their school life, something happens with a loss in their life later on, and they'll go, oh, memory bank. What do I do for grief and loss? Well, I can remember, where did I learn this from? Oh, Mum. What did Mum do with grief and loss? Oh, well, she was fine. She never cried. She was fine. Well, I better be fine too. Yeah. So same as everything we're teaching our children, just try and do it the best we can as parents. And there's no rule book. We know this. That's the common kind of statement.
I think you said once.
Don't be scared of it.
Yeah, everyone's doing the best they can with what they've got. So we all will make mistakes with this. Don't beat yourself up about it, but just that idea of modelling the process almost of how to experience that emotion and be in it for a bit to your kids. That's a really good thing you can do for them, I imagine. Like, that's going to leave them in a really good place as adults.
100%. And I guess also touching on what I said, sometimes you will stuff it up. Sometimes you might be in the kitchen and then they might see you swear or yell or be over the top a little bit. In that situation, repair. Okay, so after you've settled down, after you're feeling okay, just talk to the kids. Hey guys, I know when you came home from school today, mummy was in the kitchen and was swearing and really angry. I was just feeling really angry and upset, still missing dad or whatever it is. And that was just how I was feeling. But, there are better ways to kind of, release that. And and if you were scared or confused of what you saw, then just talk to me about it. Is there anything I can kind of help understand? But mum's also going to try, to express her feelings, a bit better in the future, so you don't get scared when you see that. So just repair on it. You don't have to be perfect.
And that repair job, that can get you back almost, like that can make up for whatever damage you may have done. Yeah.
Anything. And remember that for any parenting stuff, right? Just repair. And it's fine. We don't have to be perfect.
There's also an inclination, I think, amongst some parents, particularly, again, sort of perfectionist or busy types that are trying to avoid emotion or are scared of emotion, to just stay really, really busy. Is that a good thing for kids?
No. So the staying busy is complete avoidance and blocking. And yeah, that will be trying to block those stages as well. And it's not allowing the child or the adult to sit in that emotional state. So, okay, so we've got this plan today and we're going to go to the skate park and then we're going over to friends and then we're doing this and we're doing this. It's really the parents' fear probably doing that, of not wanting to maybe sit around the house and look over at the couch and kind of go, oh, my child's crying or my child's sad.
Because we don't want to see our kids crying. We don't want to see our kids in pain.
We don't want to see that. We don't want to go through it ourselves, and we definitely don't want to see that. Whereas that child sitting on the couch crying or, needing that moment is them getting through those stages. So if we don't allow that, you're going to assist in blocking those stages for your child, who naturally will be doing the process because, like I said, they don't block as much as us adults.
Yeah. And also it's inevitable.
They will be doing the right thing usually.
It has to happen anyway.
We need to watch them. We almost need to watch them. It's like if you've got a kid and they're having a day of tears, maybe you need to just pull up, the blanket with them and go, maybe they're getting the grief and loss cycle right. Let's Uber Eats and have a cry together. But yeah, it's really the worst thing you could do. It's really the worst thing you could do. Yeah.
Because you're not getting rid of it. You're just putting it off. It's going to come eventually.
And you're also setting up, if you think about it like this, you're also setting up like a weird life for the kids. But Mum, we never used to do 12 activities on a Saturday. Why are we doing it now?
Yeah.
And are we going to now, and the other side, because again, remember, kids can be very literal and they might be adapting to that change faster, well, definitely faster than the adult will. Oh, wow. So parent dies, we do fun stuff. Okay. Sorry to throw it out there, guys, but it's what kids will think. They will be very literal. So, maybe this isn't so bad. So then in 3-4 weeks' time, when, the surviving parents gone back to work and now, we've got stuff to do, like house cleaning on a weekend. What do you mean? But we do fun stuff on the weekend. So it's also really kind of being clear of, don't set up things that you can't now follow through with permanently. If you need time as a parent, this is different, right? If you need to say, I need moments to lose my shit. I need to break down. I cannot be dealing with Miss 3 and Mr. 5-year-old right now, and I need help. Children go to grandparents. Children go to friend's house. That's different. That's different. Because, again, that's kind of a normal thing that kids might do. And then, they might do some extra activities at grandma's or at friends' houses, but they're used to that. And that's just you calling time out for yourself. So I really want to be clear. If you need to call out time for yourself, that's very different to let's fill in the weekend and distract our kids with lots of activities. Call time out any time as the adult that you need and send those kids off to where they can go so you can have that space and that time.
I think you've just made me realise, because we put together some notes around this conversation, and I just think daftly, I didn't consider the mechanical reality that now you are the full parent. You are now carrying 200% of the work, whereas before, ideally it was 100% each. And so you are going to need time out. You are going to need a break and have the support structures that you're willing to call on to carve that out for yourself. Because, it'd be so hard.
Yeah, 100%. You are it. You are it.
I feel really embarrassed I didn't think of that.
Especially numbers, hey?
Yeah, you've got to equalise the equation, Jordan. What are you doing? For the parents that are listening and maybe they're watching their kid and they're doing the things they can to make sure their kid's experiencing that emotion, what are some really big red flags that maybe parents should say, okay, well, that's not okay. I think I need to go and get some extra help or do something more?
Yeah. So your best source really for this, because again, you're going to not be in the best state yourself and probably not seeing things kind of clearly or rational yourself sometimes, which again is fine, all fine, is probably external people around you may notice this first. And especially if your children are school aged or at daycare or kindy, they are going to be your best sources of how is my child going and do you think child needs some extra support, because they're going to notice the subtle things that happens when I guess our body goes into too much stress, goes into what I kind of refer to as that overflow state. And when that happens, subtle little things in our brain shuts down. So picture that you've got your kind of your stress entity, your stress cup, I call it, or your emotional hub. Grief and loss will fill that. Okay. So even if that's, you've had a perfect life, which, you know, not many people are blessed to say they have, but let's pretend your stress cup is completely empty before this loss occurs. Loss occurs, I promise you, it's full now and it's overflowing for all of you, for your children, everyone. It will start coming out. It will release with all of these things we're sort of talking about naturally. And there's also other ways that you can help release it. But if it doesn't, if it keeps on overflowing and it doesn't start naturally kind of, you know, releasing, what I kind of educate, and this is nothing in books, this is just, again, 20 odd years of working in this and kind of listening to people and watching and coming up with my own theories. Your brain then kind of goes to mush. We all know that, right? We can all say in high levels of stress, our brain goes to mush. I think we can all understand that. But what actually happens, how I describe it, is it's like the functions that our body doesn't need to survive kind of go, we don't have the energy to function on all of the levels that we as humans would like to. So I've kind of got to switch off the things that we don't need to survive, heart beating, blood, you know, oxygen. And I'm going to turn those other activities, those other things we like, off or down.
The non-essential stuff.
That's right. So picture like one of those old kind of switchboards, right? And that's how I sort of talk to clients with it. And it's like, so all of these functions that we don't need just sort of get slid down. And those can be basic things: memory, concentration, attention span, motivation, excitement levels, appetite, problem-solving abilities, that kind of stuff. So the best people who are going to notice that those things get kind of a bit more difficult for your child is probably going to be teachers, daycare workers, and other people around them. And again, there's always going to be a normal time frame, right? There's always going to be, if I had a client come in to me and say, I'm really worried about my child, they're not able to concentrate, they're not sleeping very well, and they haven't eaten, and they just lost their parent. And I go, okay, how long ago did that loss? Oh, well, it was 3 weeks ago. I'd send them out of my room and say, like seriously.
Yeah, completely normal.
I'd lovely educate them on the grief and loss process and say, this is very normal, and, you know, kind of give yourselves both a break.
Yeah.
If you have this, you know, kind of a parent coming in with a child after maybe, 6 months or kind of heading to that 12 months plus mark, then I might say, okay, maybe there's something here that we really need to kind of consider. It might be something basic like the food stuff for kids. You know, kids don't naturally carry probably the excess that, a lot of us adults kind of have, just, and not even in a bad way. We just know we've got excess. So if we don't eat for a few weeks as an adult and just get the basics into us, we're going to normally be okay, right? Children have a lot less, body fat. They don't have those reserves yet. So it could be that their appetite or their diet has really struggled, and the surviving parent hasn't really noticed that. And, grandma or teachers kind of going, oh, we've just noticed that your child's not eating and, has really kind of lost a lot of weight and doesn't have energy to play on the playground. So then that might be something that then parent has to kind of go, oh, all right, this is a concern, and I do need to get the basics of just food and nutrition into my child, because they've got growing bones and they do need energy to, get through the day.
And I think be open to that. Don't try not to take that as a critique. Just take that as an alert that you can then take action on.
Yeah. So I guess it's long version, short version. It's the basic things for kids, probably, especially the younger kids, are really important just to focus on earlier, like, just the food and the basic nutrition. And the emotional things, I would be saying, I'd really be wanting 6 months kind of onwards before I'd be overly concerned about that.
Yeah.
And a lot of, again, school and teachers know that. I had a friend who passed recently, and I know that he left his wife and his son, and the school's just been beautiful with his son, and they know that for that first really 6 months plus 6 months and maybe even 12 months, there's not going to be a lot going on for that child, because he was a little bit older. So schools are aware of this. Trust in people around you, and just listen to things that people say. Don't take it as an attack, like you said. And seek information. Talk to your doctor first if you just kind of are a bit worried. And then maybe it is just getting your kids kind of checked to have a chat with someone like a psych. Or lots of schools have great programs on change and grief and loss and things like that. So sometimes it can even just be getting your kids to do a bit of a program so they understand it.
I think you said it a few times, but be a bit easier on yourself. I mean, even though we're talking about this in very sort of clear principles and everybody's muddling through, it's just try to find the way that works best for you and get the support that you need. Which brings me to the second part of what I wanted to cover today. The juggle of a parent juggling their own emotional needs with those of the kids. How hard can that be to juggle that and, almost honor both sets at the same time?
So if you want to make it really, really difficult, don't acknowledge your emotions and don't understand that you're going to go through the emotions.
Fight against them.
Yep. If you want to make this as simple as possible, understand that you've got emotions, be able to take that time out and respect the validation and the need for you to have those emotions and to have that downtime. And then you will understand that your children need it as well. So it's kind of a little bit of, it doesn't need to be a difficult process if you just respect the process and respect the need for your emotions to come out. You will then, because again, like what we talked, you will do it, child will model it, you'll see child modeling it, and maybe then you won't be scared of it. Right? Oh, I'm doing this as well. You might even educate, your child. Oh, mum actually or dad finds it really, really handy to, have a bit of a cry in the shower. Or when I get really, really angry, I scream at the top of my lungs. What do you want to do? Let's go for a car ride, or let's go out to the backyard and just, scream. Sorry, tree lovers, let's get a stick and just like whack the tree. I've had clients do that. I've walked around with little kids and just, that's what they've done. They've just thrown like sticks in a park and got it out, like got the anger of it out that way. So if you understand that, you will actually process through it and won't, and it can be easy. It doesn't need to be hard. Again, your body knows what to do. You need to trust a little bit and get over the idea that, the emotions are not going to happen, or that they're bad emotions, or that they're scary and they shouldn't come out. Sit in it and you will be absolutely as fine as you can. With the sadness still, though.
This is probably going to come across like a really silly question. I'm a grieving parent. I've got 2 young kids. I have to, the house still needs to function. So I got to get them fed, get them bathed, get them dressed, get them into bed. During that 2-hour period, I hear that song that reminds me of the wedding, and I have a severe, a really strong grief response. Is it... Can I try to park that emotion and come back to it and just go through those mechanics of getting the kids to bed? Or is it more, I guess it's case by case, but is that okay?
Yep, 100%. And a lot of parents are going to have to learn this, and also adults will have to learn this, because again, unless you've spoken to Jordan and had some really good financial advice and have got everything lined up, you're
I was going to bring up
also
life
going to have
insurance.
to go back to work, right? You're going to have to go back to work. And for a lot of people, you're going to have to go back to work pretty soon. Not many people get the luxury, even with good policies and everything, of, a long period of time off. It might be that they just are in their own businesses and, I might have this life insurance money coming through, but I actually still need a business in the future. And if I now step away, I'm going to lose all of my clients. So you're going to have times even at work, you're going to have to do this. So my rule with this is you do get to make deals with emotions. You get to say, not now. I've got to get the kids to bed. Not now. I've got a client walking in for a meeting. But this is the but, and this is where you've got to follow through. the deal has to be made, and the deal has to then happen at the end of the day. So, for example, I'm feeling, this song's just come on. Oh my gosh, I'm not okay. I can't deal with this right now. So I am going to use one of those great blocking strategies that we all know. And I don't need to teach you guys how to do that because we all know how to do that. I'm going to block this. I'm going to put this back down right now. I can't deal with it. But I promise, the important part, when I get home tonight and the kids are in bed, I'm going to have a shower or whatever your strategy is. I'm just saying shower because that's like my place. I just think it's great. Crying in the shower is just great. It doesn't make your eyes puffy. So all of you just take that tip. It's really good. I'm going to get in the shower. I'm going to now remember this moment and I'm going to sit in this and release it. Or on my way home, I'm going to put the song on in the car before I even drive safely. But I'll sit there before I even drive and I'm going to cry or I'm going to yell or I'm going to scream. If you follow through with that deal, your little emotional hub will be your friend. If you start making those deals and you don't follow through with them, your little hub will not be your friend.
It will keep filling.
It will, and it won't trust you, so it won't give you the opportunity in the future to make those deals. It will then say to you, so listen, all the perfectionists out there, it will say to you, Jordan, I don't care that you've got a client walking in a couple of minutes. You are going to be rocking in the corner and crying like a baby, and there will be nothing you can do about it.
You stiffed me last time. I'm not going to let you off the hook this time.
And again, humans, people, all of us need to learn emotions can out-trump us. They are stronger than us and they will come through even when we don't want them to. So there's a power. I had a very perfectionist person once and I was telling him about this and just this need to sort of, go and sit and cry or blah, 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 blah. And I was giving him an example of something, and I was using like a real life example and he kind of stopped me midway and he goes, Donna, stop. And I went, what? And he goes, I come to you for like help with this. I don't need to hear that you're needing to have a cry in the shower or a cry at the park. He goes, you're meant to have your kind of shit together and you're meant to be in control. And I said, oh, you're still getting it wrong. I am in control because I do the release work. I acknowledge it and I release it. You're not in control because you don't do that. So see it differently.
That's a really powerful idea. I like, you have to honor your deal. You have to stick to it.
Honor the deal. Otherwise it will come out when you don't want it. Trust me. And it might not be in the meeting. It could be at anywhere.
Just an explosion.
That could be a whole other thing. A whole other episode. People, tell us where your emotions have come out when you didn't like them or least expected them to. And I'll just be sitting here going, yep, what deals did you not follow up with?
When did your emotions embarrass you because you did listen to them? One thing that kind of comes up, I mean, a lot of the people that I work with and the people that we're talking to with this really are generally the mums. The dads go on now, the mums. Now, dads and mums, I think it's fair to say, have different relationships and do different things with their kids. How can the parent that's still here, should they be trying to replace that relationship that dad had? Like, dad took them to the footy or dad taught them this. Should mum try to replace that? Should mum try to ignore it? What's a strategy around that?
So no, we're not replacing the other person. And the best strategy really for this is this really bizarre thing to do. Talk to your children. Have a conversation and say, I know dad used to take you to the football and that was like something that you guys love to do. Or I know dad was really good at wrestling or kicking the football. I can't kick the football. You know that. I'm not that fun parent in that side. So what do you want to do for football? Mum, obviously you're going to football. I'm going to take you. That's now my job. But what do you want me to do when we're there? Because I can't be dad. Or do we need to call in someone else? Do you want to go with now, your friend Max? Because Max's dad's really cool and does all the football stuff. Or do we call your uncle in or your granddad takes you? Or like just talk to your child and come up with strategies, because this is, again, where parents, and this is probably a little bit of the older one, but when I say older child, just off the top of my head, I'd be very confident to say that, a 7, 8-year-old would easily be able to give you, even a 6-year-old would be able to give you some real clear strategies on what they would like for those situations. And then you can help kind of problem solve and follow through with that. But just tell them, just be honest and say, this is, again, acknowledge that emotion. This is going to be different now. And how are you going to feel about that? How are you going to feel now before the football game? Dad's not going to be there to kind of, kick the ball around and warm up with you, and I can't. How are you feeling about that? And don't assume, again, as we said before, what your kid's going to say. So your child might go, oh, actually, that's okay. That used to annoy me because all the other kids were actually, playing on the swing set. I wanted to do that instead. Or
That
your
was kind
child
of
might
rubbish.
say,
So.
yeah, well, I'm really worried about that because, like, I want to be a professional AFL player and obviously for Essendon, just throw that in. And,
if
and
they're good.
that was important for me. So then the parent might go, okay, well, who else could help you with that? So talk to your child and just come up with something. But no, you're not there to now shadow replace that parent or pretend to be them.
To fill that gap. You can't extend yourself.
Fill a gap. And then you're again denying the emotions of accepting that person has gone and that now maybe wrestling, well, now definitely if it's dad that's past wrestling games with dad is never going to happen again. But wrestling games with, uncle might. It's not going to be the same. We validate that. Of course you're going to miss the ones with dad. Dad was the best at it. So let's see if uncle can kind of try and maybe be as good as dad was.
So just talk about it. Revolutionary idea, Donna.
I know, it's crazy. Hey, you pulled in the big guns.
What a bonkers concept.
I've got letters at the end of my name.
The third area, and we've covered quite a few of them already, but I just wanted to talk about some practical tips that people that have listened to this and are sort of examining what they're doing. What are some, big practical ideas that people can start working on to try to make the process a little bit easier?
Yeah, so we probably, I guess, summarizing them is really, it's all about the emotions. Funny with the psychologist, isn't it? It's being gentle. Probably let's go, because we talked about a lot, let's go into that one. It's being gentle with yourself. It's doing what you can when you can. It's being okay if your child eats 2-minute noodles now for the next 2 weeks or month. Like they will actually be okay. Throw them an apple or a carrot in their lunchbox as well. And, it's okay if your child watches, more time on the iPad than you would have had. It's okay if your rules change. So, that as well with parents is sort of another just easy way to kind of put it. It's not your norm. It's not the schedule that you will even naturally fall into once this process is kind of you've settled and you've adjusted. You're in this adjustment phase and yeah, it's okay. It's okay to have ice cream for dinner. It's okay for your kids to jump into bed with you for a snuggle. That's not going to mean now that, they're going to sleep with you now until they're 25. That's probably, something.
Recognizing that it's a finite period of time. I mean, it's that first 6 months, first year or so. You said adjustment. I think it's not a light switch, is it? You're not going to go from really barely keeping it together to being completely functional.
No, I really think the first 12 months is significant, and that probably sounds silly. It's the year of the firsts, we call it, I guess, and most people will identify that, but we really name it in therapy with clients as the year of the firsts. So think of all the parents right now who have lost a partner, this weekend now going through their first Mother's Day without maybe mum around, or even their first Mother's Day without dad around, who can't now. How are the kids going to
organise the gifts and do the breakfast thing?
Yeah. It's the first birthdays, it's the first anniversaries, it's the first Christmas, Easters, and then it's the first death anniversary. So a lot of people strangely exhale after that first death anniversary. And I think that's them going, I survived. I didn't think I was going to survive, and I survived. We've done a year. It's really significant. If people are kind of listening for other people who have gone through this, really pay attention to that first death anniversary for people that have lost others. Like, give them that, give them that love and that, like, almost a little bit of that. That the day is going to be hard for them, but kind of also give them a bit of a reassurance that, hey, look at you, you did it. Like, you just got through a year. Like, wow. And kind of that will usually be the hardest year. Yeah. So
I'm finding a lot of the people they're also the executor of the estate. So they're dealing with all that admin-y, decision-making, heavy stuff at the same time as balancing all of this. And I think it makes that even harder.
And remember what I said about the brain turning off? So also for, people working in this field, like even yourself, Jordan, like, when they come into you and they're just mush, and you could have the most intelligent person and you're just a simple question of, which banks were you at? I don't know. I think we set it up in Camberwell, but it could have been New South Wales. And you're just, again, not, but you can kind of sit there thinking, this is a simple question.
Yeah.
You know, it's just knowing that it's not going to be like that forever. Yeah. It's going to, as we said, you'll always carry sadness. There's always going to be that this wasn't how you wanted your life and your script to be, but it's not going to be that way forever. So those routines, those structures in that first year, just be kind and just go with and leave yourself alone. Like, just be nice to yourself. Don't be mean.
And I think the point you make about sort of our role in that first year, I think it's really, one thing I've learned is don't do any big changes. Like set up, so say they've inherited a stack of money. Do not invest that money. Just park it in I can't say that actually. I think I have to put a general advice warning, but park it somewhere where you're not going to do any harm and come back to it. Like you don't need to lock anything away right away. So that first year, take it slow, be kind to yourself. As you start not progressing, that's not the right thing, but as you start adding things to your life again, should you try to do everything at once? Should you just focus on one little thing at a time? What's a better approach, do you think?
Yeah, so really, really small things, starting with the basics, you know, getting yourself up, getting yourself eating well again, getting your sleep patterns into routine. You know, maybe getting back to having a shower every day, you know, and as silly as that sounds, again, that's okay. If you're in a shower every couple of days, that's okay. Then it might be decisions about work. And again, depending on kind of your life and how this has all fallen, you know, for you, it might be that you do have to return back to work full time within, you know, a week or a couple of weeks. So then I guess it's about what's important in work right now, what can wait, having conversations if you can with, you know, bosses and like, I'm here, I don't want to lose my job. That's also something for people who have to return that they get really scared. If I even, you know, tell my boss that I might need a little bit of flexibility, then I'm going to lose my job. I can't lose my job. I'm the only parent now. So, you know, just, you mightn't have to have that conversation, but you might just say, hey, I know what's important. I know that these emails I have to respond to, and maybe I'm at my best in the early mornings of the day, and by the afternoons, the grief is still really kind of getting heavy. So, you know, it might be that I get up and I start work earlier because I know I'm not productive later on. It's just really, it's small steps. So short-term goals to then those long-term kind of, you know, goals. You're not going to be able to go for that 10K run. And that's, again, just your body protecting you. So you're not now, you haven't lost your fitness. You're not now horrible and gross and, you know, unhealthy. It's just your body is using that energy to help with this emotional processing. And it takes a lot of energy to process, you know, grief and loss. So that 10K run might turn into, you know, a 10-minute walk, and that's okay. And then all of a sudden it will build up, and then you've gone for a run, and then, you know, a year later you're back to doing, you know, the half marathon, and you'll be like, yes, I'm back there. So
I'm back to myself
really
a little bit
small
more.
steps. And if you've got the luxury in life to take time, take it. Even if you don't feel like, because again, there's that distraction thing, right? Hey, I've just got this, all of this is sorted out, and I know that we're actually kind of set up now, and I actually don't need to do all of these things, but I'm going to do it all anyway because I need to distract myself. That would be the worst thing that you could do, you know, just sit in that time. If you've got that time, take it.
And I think that's, I mean, we joked about it, but that is life insurance. Life insurance should be leaving you enough money. Yes, you clear the debts and everything, but it should be enough to give you time to get your life back on track and to experience this and have that that moment where you can be in that, have the space for it. Donna, I think we've barely scratched the surface. I can tell that. Like, there's so much here. And I think people, if you are juggling some of these things and if you're hitting some of these walls that we've talked about, definitely reach out and seek help. Where can people find you, and what's the best place to reach you?
Well, I'm everywhere. I'm based in Melbourne, but the joy of, you know, that life in 2020 that we don't speak about now, that we all experienced, we are online. So I am just on all the socials, but the www.thecouch.biz is our direct point. All bookings can be made online. Very simple process. And just remembering as well that, you know, kids sometimes, you know, kids therapy and adult therapy is very different. Kids love therapy. They get to play. They get to beat, you know, psychologists like me at, you know, sometimes I get a bit competitive and have to kind of put them in their place. But, you know, it's kind of, it's not a bad thing for kids either. You know, anything I've been through in my life with my kids, the first thing I've ever done with anything that's related to kind of grief or loss is kind of get them to speak to someone, even if it's just for a few sessions, because I know I can't do that. I'm the psych, but I can't do that for my own kids. So reach out for you, but don't be afraid just to kind of get your children to have somebody else who they can speak to. Because again, Nana, Pa, they've lost potentially, a child or a child-in-law, aunties, uncles, they've lost a sibling or, again, a family member. So, sometimes the family is still all in their own grief space. It's nice for a kid to also come in and be told that it's okay to not be okay, but to also see someone that's not grieving that family member and can have a joke with them and, play a game and also educate them a little bit. So,
yeah, where they have space for their own emotions because they're not overwhelmed, but a lot of the space has been crowded out.
Yeah. So just be gentle, seek the supports when you need it, but remember that your body knows what to do. So trust it, go with it.
Don't fight it.
Yeah. And just,
No, thank you, Donna. This was so, I hope really, really useful. I think it's been fantastic. And definitely reach out to Donna. It's hard. It is hard. No one's denying that. So get the help when you need it and the support. So thank you. Thank you for listening to Life, Loss and Legacy. I hope you enjoyed this episode or found value in this episode. Any questions, just reach out, Jordan, Jordan, at planningsolo.com.au. Until next time, thank you for listening and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.